Tuchel praised Ghana, but England's attack now carries a real World Cup warning. Can England fix it before the draw becomes the story? Spence Partey footage is disputed. Croatia's old guard revive hope. And Munoz has Colombia ahead live. Tablo Sports starts with Tuchel Ghana and that goalless England warning. We start with the result that will be replayed in every England meeting room for the next few days. Not because England lost, but because a 0-0 at a World Cup can sometimes expose more than a defeat. Tuchel credits Ghana defending after England's struggle in goalless draw. The easy headline is that England were frustrated by Ghana, but the more uncomfortable point is that Thomas Tuchel's side did not create enough clean answers when the game slowed down. Ghana deserve real credit here, because committed defending is not a polite excuse, it is a tactical event that England failed to solve. What matters now is not public panic, it is whether England can improve chance creation before the group finale and the knockouts tighten the margins even more. Thomas Tuchel said after England's 0-0 World Cup draw with Ghana that his team found it difficult to break Ghana down, and that phrase will sting. Difficult to break down is normal at this level. Being unable to disturb the defensive shape for long stretches is a different conversation. The Guardian described England as lacking ingenuity against Ghana's defensive setup, and that is where the criticism lands hardest. England had just overpowered Croatia in their opener, then followed it with 0 goals against a Ghana side that turned the match into a test of patience, tempo, and imagination. Look, Ghana's defensive commitment was not some accidental yellow wall that appeared by magic. They protected spaces, stayed connected, and forced England into the kind of possession that looks impressive until you ask where the real chance was. Tuchel crediting Ghana matters because it stops this becoming lazy England melodrama, but it does not let England off the hook. If your attack needs open grass and early rhythm to look dangerous, then every serious opponent in the knockouts has just watched the tape with a cup of coffee and a highlighter. So let us be clear on this. England are not eliminated, and this is not a friendly-style performance issue that can be brushed away with a shrug. It is World Cup group stage fallout involving a manager, a result, and a tactical warning. Supporters are already questioning creativity and tempo under Tuchel, and they are not wrong to ask. The answer cannot just be more famous names on the team sheet. England need quicker combinations around packed areas, better occupation between the lines, and enough attacking variation to stop the next opponent from copying Ghana's plan. And because England versus Ghana could not simply end at tactics, the post-match footage has now become its own little courtroom. This is where football in 2026 gets very silly, very quickly. Spence Partey handshake clip becomes disputed post-match talking point. The clip is being treated online like a verdict, but the reporting we have says this is disputed, not proven. That distinction matters because a social media angle can hijack a match before anyone has checked whether the moment shows what people claim it shows. The bigger story is how quickly a goalless draw became a controversy cycle around conduct rather than football. Reports said Jed Spence appeared to snub Thomas Partey after England's World Cup draw with Ghana, but Hindustan Times reported that Ghana's coach denied the claim. Here is the important bit. The evidence supports treating this as disputed footage, not a confirmed refusal. No FIFA sanction is reported in the provided sources, and that should slow everyone down before the outrage machine starts printing t-shirts. Put it this way. If a handshake clip needs 6 freeze frames, 3 camera angles, and a courtroom voiceover before anyone agrees what happened, maybe we should not pretend it is established fact. Social discussion is split between sportsmanship criticism and people arguing the clip is being overread. Both reactions make sense in the current climate because post-match behavior now gets judged almost as fast as penalty decisions. There is also a football reason this caught fire. England had just failed to score, Ghana had just earned a major draw, and the emotional temperature around the match was already high. A disputed handshake becomes useful content for everyone who wants a clean villain, even when the reporting says the situation is not that clean. So no, this is not the same as confirmed misconduct, and it is definitely not the same as FIFA opening disciplinary proceedings. Elsewhere, one of the tournament's great old engines is still coughing into life. Croatia did not produce fireworks, but they did produce the one thing a wounded group stage team needs most, a result. Croatia Old Guard revive World Cup hopes on Modric's 200th cap. Luka Modric's 200th Croatia cap is a beautiful milestone, but the real story is that Croatia are still operating on narrow margins. A 1-0 win over Panama keeps the last 32 dream alive without proving the Old Guard have suddenly found a higher gear. Celebration and concern can both be true here, because Croatia survived and Panama were eliminated by that same result. The Athletic and New York Times framed Croatia's win over Panama as a revival on Luka Modric's 200th cap, while Sky Sports confirmed the hard tournament facts. Croatia beat Panama 1-0, stayed in contention, and knocked Panama out. Ante Budimir's goal from the bench gave the 2018 finalists the result they needed, and that is the sort of detail that separates a romantic milestone from a real World Cup consequence. Here is the balance. Modric reaching 200 caps for Croatia is not just a number. It is proof of a player who has carried elite rhythm, decision-making, and competitive stubbornness across eras. But Croatia's win being only 1-0 also tells you why nobody should turn this into a victory parade just yet. The narrative is split for a reason. Fans can admire Modric's longevity and still worry that Croatia are living on tight scorelines and late solutions. That detail matters because the expanded World Cup gives teams more routes to survival, but it does not remove the dangers of being too slow, too careful, or too dependent on experienced legs finding one more moment. Croatia are alive, Panama are out, and Modric's landmark now sits inside a much sharper question. Can Croatia's aging core turn survival into momentum before the next game exposes the same thin margin? Meanwhile, we go from a finished survival result to a live situation where one goal can change the entire mood of a group. Colombia have the advantage, but this is not a final whistle story yet. Muñoz puts Colombia ahead of Dr. Congo in live World Cup coverage. Daniel Muñoz putting Colombia ahead matters, but the live lead is not the same as qualification or a completed result. The smarter reading is about pressure. Colombia have the chance to turn control into a Group K boost, and Dr. Congo still have time to damage that plan. Live World Cup coverage is useful only if we keep the line between current score state and final consequence very clear. ESPN's live World Cup coverage reported Daniel Muñoz edging Colombia ahead of Dr. Congo. World Soccer Talk separately framed Colombia's win, draw, or loss as significant for the Group K standings. So the score state matters, but the outcome still matters more. Colombia leading in live coverage tells us where the game has moved. It does not tell us what the table will look like when the referee ends it. That is not a small distinction. In a World Cup group, a lead can change a team's route toward the round of 32, shift the stress onto the other bench, and alter the way both sides handle risk. But if Colombia start managing the moment too early, the advantage can become a trap. One goal changes posture, a final whistle changes the tournament. The live reaction is focused on whether Colombia can turn pressure into a group position boost, and that is exactly where the tension sits. Muñoz has supplied the concrete moment, but Group K implications depend on the final outcome, not the live lead alone. Until this is confirmed as finished, nobody should be announcing Colombia's next round or writing Dr. Congo out of the match. Now to a story with longer-term impact, because the 48-team World Cup is doing exactly what everyone expected and feared. It is giving us more football, more hope, and a standings puzzle that looks like it was designed during a power cut. World Cup Round of 32 Trackers Update Knockout Qualification Picture. The Round of 32 Trackers are not just admin. They are now part of how fans experience the tournament. What matters more than a single group table is the new qualification web. Top 2 teams in each group, plus the best third-place teams, move on. The benefit of the expanded format is more teams staying alive, but the cost is that clarity arrives later and confusion gets a primetime slot. Al Jazeera and NBC Sports have published trackers on which teams have reached the 2026 World Cup Round of 32. The safe broad point is this. The cited coverage is tracking qualification for the last 32, while separating teams already in the knockout rounds from teams still waiting on group outcomes. We are not going to list extra qualifiers here without current tracker confirmation, because that is how a news update turns into a mess. The structure is the key. In this 48-team format, the top 2 in each group progress, and the best third-place teams also go through. That means some teams can finish third and still be alive, while others may spend hours staring at goal difference, disciplinary records, and results from groups they do not even play in. Romantic? Maybe. Simple? Absolutely not. This is the tournament equivalent of asking a fan to enjoy football while doing a spreadsheet under emotional distress. Fans are already debating the fairness and complexity of third-place advancement. The upside is obvious. Fewer dead rubbers, more countries with something to fight for, and more final group games with real stakes. The risk is just as real. Qualification can feel less like a table and more like an appeals process. The round of 32 picture is moving, and the difference between safe and sweating may come down to one late goal in another group. The situation is becoming more complex, because the round of 32 tracker only tells half the story. The third place table is where hope goes to be measured, argued over, and occasionally crushed. World Cup third place standings and tiebreakers explained. The biggest mistake is thinking third place means safety, because it does not. Tiebreakers are not background detail in this format. They can decide which teams extend their tournament and which teams fly home. This is where managers may start making strategically strange choices late in group games, especially if a draw or a narrow defeat keeps them above the line. Sports Illustrated and SB Nation have published explainers on the 2026 World Cup third place table and tiebreakers. The foundation is simple enough. Third place standings are being tracked across the groups, and tiebreakers help decide which teams advance to the round of 32. The tournament has 12 groups, feeding a 32-team knockout stage, so the comparison is not just within your own group anymore. Here is the important bit. Not all third-place teams advance. That single sentence should probably be printed on every studio desk, because otherwise the conversation becomes chaos. Teams finishing third must be measured against other third-place teams, and the tiebreaker sequence becomes part of the drama. goal difference, goals scored, and other criteria can suddenly matter as much as the headline result. The tactical consequences are fascinating and slightly ugly. A team might protect a one-goal loss if that damage is still better than chasing an equalizer and conceding again. Another team might push for a third goal because goals scored could be valuable later. Supporters are confused by cross-group comparisons for good reason, but the teams cannot afford to be confused. One substitution, one yellow card, one goal conceded in stoppage time can move a country from safe to waiting on someone else's result. At the same time, FIFA has had to answer a controversy that lives right between player welfare, broadcast rhythm, and public suspicion. Hydration breaks sound simple until everyone starts asking who benefits from the pause. Infantino says World Cup hydration breaks bring FIFA no extra revenue. Gianni Infantino's denial matters because the accusation around hydration breaks has become bigger than the actual stoppage. The serious issue is heat and player welfare, but fans are also watching the broadcast interruptions with a raised eyebrow. The fair position is not conspiracy, it is pressure testing FIFA's explanation while remembering that extreme summer conditions are a real sporting concern. Gianni Infantino said World Cup hydration breaks are purely a sporting matter and bring no additional revenue for FIFA. BBC Sport reported that framing, and the Mirror has also treated the issue as an unpopular talking point after England-related criticism. That gives us the line from FIFA clearly: no extra revenue, sporting matter, player conditions at the center of the decision. Now, supporters and pundits are not being irrational for asking questions, because football has trained people to be suspicious whenever a pause appears at the perfect time for television. But suspicion is not the same as proof. The reporting we have says Infantino denied extra revenue, and we should not claim FIFA admitted commercial motives when the available facts say the opposite. The player welfare side cannot be brushed aside either. Hydration break debate is linked to extreme summer conditions at the 2026 World Cup, and the sport has a responsibility to manage heat, fatigue, and safety. The tension is rhythm versus welfare, fairness versus interruption, and public trust versus official explanation. The breaks have not been scrapped, FIFA says there is no extra revenue, and the argument is still very much alive. That is not the only major tactical storyline today. Brazil are heading toward a final Group C meeting with Scotland, and Carlo Ancelotti's version of Brazil is being judged before the biggest tests even arrive. Ancelotti's Brazil project in focus before Scotland World Cup meeting. The Ancelotti question is not whether Brazil have talent. Brazil always have talent. The question is whether this team can balance control and flair without sanding off the very thing that makes Brazil dangerous. Against Scotland, performance matters because it feeds into the bigger mission, ending Brazil's wait for a World Cup title dating back to 2002. BBC Sport previewed Carlo Ancelotti's mission with Brazil before their final Group C game against Scotland. This is National Team World Cup news, not a club football nostalgia package. The framing is about Ancelotti's Brazil role and the quest to end a 24-year wait for World Cup glory, with Brazil seeking a first title since 2002. Look, Ancelotti brings calm, structure, and a history of handling elite players without turning every dressing room into a soap opera. But the fan debate is already sharp. Has he made Brazil more pragmatic or less expressive? That is a fair question. Brazil can be more controlled and still be Brazil, but if control becomes caution, the whole project starts to feel like a luxury car being driven permanently in second gear. Scotland give Brazil a current, concrete test before the knockout route becomes clearer. We should not treat the match as already played, we should not reduce this to a personality profile of Ancelotti. The stakes are tactical identity, group stage pressure, and whether Brazil can look like a side preparing to win a World Cup rather than just manage one carefully. In another development, South Korea are dealing with a very different kind of pressure. Their next match is not just about tactics, it is about whether a noisy campaign can be brought back under control. South Korea seek to steady chaotic World Cup campaign against South Africa. South Korea's situation is tense because the football stakes are clear while the off-field noise keeps pulling attention away from the pitch. Son Heung-min and Hong Myung-bo are central to the story, but the real test is collective focus against South Africa. A point has been presented as enough for progression, which means this is a match where emotional control may matter as much as attacking ambition. The Guardian reported that South Korea have dealt with off-field issues, including Son Heung-min being mocked over military service and a drone being shot down. That sounds chaotic because it is chaotic, but the match context is the anchor. South Korea faced South Africa with progression still at stake, and 1 point against South Africa was presented as enough for Hong Myung-bo's side to progress. This is where tournament management becomes brutally simple. You can have the better players, the bigger name, and the more familiar star in Son Heung-min, but if the atmosphere around the camp turns into static, the game can become harder than the table suggests. Hong's job is not just picking a side, it is dragging the focus back to 90 minutes of decisions, duels, and risk management. We should not sensationalize the drone incident beyond the reporting, and we should not claim South Korea are already out. The point is sharper than that. South Korea have a path, but the path runs through a high-pressure group game where a draw may be enough and a loss could change everything. South Africa will know that pressure too, and that makes the first goal, or even the first mistake, feel heavy. And now we circle back to England versus Ghana, because the match has produced tactics, disputed footage, and a refereeing row. That is a lot of drama for a game with no goal. FIFA World Cup referee accused of bias, no penalty call in England vs Ghana match stirs row, NDTV Sports. The penalty controversy matters because it adds another layer to the England-Ghana fallout, but accusation is not the same as established proof. The dangerous move would be to let refereeing anger hide England's attacking problems or erase Ghana's defensive work. This story belongs in the episode because it shows how one goalless draw can split into several competing narratives before the next match even starts. NDTV Sports framed the row around a FIFA World Cup referee accused of bias and a no-penalty call in England vs Ghana stirring debate. The provided source package gives us the controversy as a reported talking point, not a final official judgment, so the careful wording matters. There is a row, there are accusations, and there was a no-penalty call being discussed. That is not the same as proving bias. Football supporters will always argue penalty incidents, especially in a World Cup match involving England, where every contact in the box can become a national referendum by breakfast. But the danger is that a refereeing debate becomes too convenient. England still scored 0, Ghana still defended with discipline, Tuchel still has a chance creation issue to solve before tougher knockout-level tests arrive. That is the thread running through the England-Ghana aftermath. One match created tactical criticism, a disputed handshake clip, and now a refereeing controversy. Each part has its own weight, but the central football fact remains unchanged. England drew 0-0 with Ghana at the 2026 World Cup. The next England performance will decide whether this was a warning sign or the first chapter of a bigger tournament problem. Now, the same handshake theme appears again through another headline, and this is exactly where discipline matters. A repeated allegation does not become confirmed just because more people have seen the clip. Thomas Partey and Jed Spence, Spurs fullback, appears to snub handshake with former Arsenal midfielder Radio Royal. This headline is explosive because it names Thomas Partey, Jed Spence, Tottenham, and Arsenal-adjacent history, but the reporting we have still does not make the snub a settled fact. The careful read is that the clip appears to show something, while another report says Ghana's coach denied the claim. So let us be clear on this. This is not done yet as a proven misconduct story, and it should not be treated like a signed confession. Radio Royal's headline says Thomas Partey and Jed Spence were involved in a moment where the Spurs fullback appeared to snub a handshake with the former Arsenal midfielder. That wording is doing a lot of work. Appears to is not the same as definitely did. The reporting package around this topic also includes the denial from Ghana's coach, which means the responsible version is simple: the moment is disputed. Look, football loves a rivalry frame, and this one is almost too easy. Spurs fullback, former Arsenal midfielder. England vs Ghana emotions still hot. The clip arrives, people pick a side, and suddenly a post-match line becomes a morality play. But the evidence we have does not support saying Jed Spence definitely refused Thomas Partey's handshake, and no FIFA sanction is reported in the sources. That detail matters because the match already has enough real football attached to it. Ghana defended England into a 0-0. Tuchel admitted the difficulty of breaking them down. England supporters are arguing about creativity and tempo. If the handshake story becomes the headline, it should be labeled correctly: disputed post-match footage, not proven misconduct. Anything stronger turns a visual fragment into a verdict. Finally, from clip culture back to the tournament machine itself. The question every fan is asking now is not just who won today, but what that result actually buys them. 2026 World Cup. How teams can advance to the knockout rounds. The ESPN-style qualification question matters because the 48-team World Cup has changed the rhythm of group stage survival. Top 2 qualification is still the clean route, but the best third-place teams make the picture messier and more dramatic. The risk for fans is assuming a team is safe too early, because this format can keep hope alive, while tiebreakers quietly sharpen the knife. The headline asks how teams can advance to the knockout rounds at the 2026 World Cup, and the basic frame is clear from the wider tracker reporting. The tournament feeds into a round of 32, with the top 2 teams in each group and the best third-place teams progressing. That is the skeleton of the format. The chaos comes from everything that happens around it. Here is the important bit. A win may give a team control. A draw may be enough in some groups, and third place may still leave a country waiting on results elsewhere. That is not the old World Cup logic, where the final group table gave most fans a cleaner answer. In this version, cross-group comparison matters, and the third-place standings can turn goal difference, goals scored, and late concessions into national stress events. So no, we should not list teams as qualified unless a current tracker confirms it, and we should not use old 32-team tournament assumptions. This is a live qualification picture with moving parts. One late goal in Group K, one narrow Croatia win, one South Korea point against South Africa, or one tiebreaker swing can change the round of 32 route. The format keeps more teams alive, but it also makes certainty arrive later. That is the World Cup picture tonight. England have a creativity problem dressed up in several controversies, Ghana have earned respect through defending, Croatia are still alive through Modric's milestone, Colombia's live lead must still become a result, and the 48-team format is turning qualification into a full-time calculation. Keep the receipts close, because at this World Cup the final whistle is only the start of the argument.